Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the minds who re-engineered the world. If you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing and liking the video, it truly helps the channel grow. Larry Page and Sergey Brin's story is, in many ways, the story of the modern internet. But long before their names became associated with Google searches, YouTube videos, digital maps, Android phones, and artificial intelligence, they were simply two curious children raised in homes where ideas mattered. Their lives began thousands of miles apart, shaped by different histories, different cultures, and different struggles, yet both were quietly pulled toward the same destiny, organizing the world's information. Lawrence Edward Page was born on March 26, 1973, in East Lansing, Michigan, into a household steeped in academia. His father, Carl Page, was a respected professor of computer science, and his mother, Gloria, taught programming. In the Page home, early computers sat beside musical instruments, books on mathematics filled the shelves, and conversations often drifted toward logic, technology, and invention. Larry was a thoughtful child, sometimes quiet, sometimes restless, always seeking to understand how things worked. He dismantled toys, studied the innards of machines, and experimented with homemade gadgets. His parents encouraged exploration. Nothing was too trivial or too strange to take apart. He attended a Montessori school, where he learned to follow curiosity rather than fixed instructions, an educational philosophy that would later shape the way he thought about problems, teams, and innovation. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in Moscow, Sergey Brin entered the world on August 21, 1973. His family lived under the pressures of Soviet discrimination against Jewish citizens. His father, Michael Brin, was a mathematician with dreams of academic freedom. His mother, Eugenia, worked in scientific research. But the Soviet Union restricted their opportunities, monitored their careers, and suppressed their ambitions. When Sergey was just 6, his parents made a courageous decision to leave everything, their heritage, their jobs, their home, behind and begin again in the United States. It took years of bureaucratic obstacles and emotional strain, but they succeeded. The Brin family settled in Maryland, where young Sergey adapted quickly. He learned English, excelled academically, and felt the relief of growing up in a place where he could explore without fear. Both boys, Larry in Michigan, Sergey in Maryland, grew up surrounded by mathematics, computers, and intellectual questioning. Both learned to think independently. Both learned that information mattered. And both quietly developed the mindset of problem solvers long before they ever met. In high school, Larry Page cultivated interests that spanned beyond engineering. At the University of Michigan, he explored robotics, renewable energy, and human-computer interaction. He imagined devices that could 3D print objects, cars that could drive themselves, and databases that could store unimaginable amounts of information. His ideas often felt futuristic, but he believed technology was an instrument for making the world more efficient and more understandable. Sergey Brin, at the University of Maryland, immersed himself in computational mathematics. He excelled in data mining, finding patterns in large sets of numbers, and enjoyed presenting research papers that challenged established thinking. He was outgoing, energetic, and unafraid to debate professors if a theory didn't sit right with him. His mind worked quickly, shifting between math problems, philosophical conversations, and gymnastic routines. By the mid-1990s, both Larry and Sergey independently arrived at the same place, Stanford University. Stanford, located in the heart of Silicon Valley, was a magnet for dreamers, researchers, and tinkerers. It was a place where brilliant minds built new companies in garages and dorm rooms, where the spirit of experimentation filled the air, and where the digital frontier felt limitless. The story of Larry and Sergey's first meeting has become almost mythical. Sergey was tasked with giving tours to prospective graduate students, and Larry happened to be on one of those tours. The two argued almost immediately, about technology, about the future of the web, about the mathematics behind search engines. Their personalities clashed, Larry more quiet and analytical, Sergey more expressive and challenging. But beneath the friction was a shared drive. Both wanted to understand systems at a fundamental level, both cared about logic and elegance, and both believed that the growing web was a chaotic maze waiting for structure. Their arguments evolved into discussions, discussions into experiments, and experiments into a collaborative project that would soon reshape human civilization. At that time, the internet was exploding with websites. Yet finding useful information remained difficult. Search engines existed, but they were primitive. They ranked results mostly by counting how often words appeared on a page. The systems were easily manipulated and often returned cluttered, irrelevant links. Larry Page saw the problem differently. To him, the web wasn't just a collection of pages, it was a giant mathematical graph, a living network connected by hyperlinks. If he could measure the relationships between pages, who linked to whom, he could infer their importance. Sergey Brin joined him with his experience in data mining and probability theory. Together they created PageRank, an algorithm that treated each link to a web page like a vote of confidence. The more high-quality sites linking to a page, the more important that page became. Their prototype search engine, first called Backrub, ran on recycled computers that Larry collected from around campus. It was slow, bulky, and noisy. But it worked better than anything else available. Stanford students quickly discovered that Larry and Sergey's engine consistently returned relevant results. Word spread across campus, then across departments, then across the early tech community. People weren't just searching, they were trusting. By 1998, it was clear their project had moved beyond academic research. Companies showed mild interest but didn't fully grasp the potential. Yahoo, AltaVista, and other big names passed on opportunities to purchase or license PageRank. So Larry and Sergey did something bold, they founded their own company. They named it Google, a fun twist on Google, the number 1 followed by 100 zeros, reflecting the vastness of their ambitions. They set up their first real office in a small Menlo Park garage owned by Susan Wojcicki. Inside that garage, surrounded by beanbags, pizza boxes, and buzzing computers, they hired their first engineer, Craig Silverstein, and went to work turning Google from a research project into a global tool. The Google homepage was unusually simple, just a logo and a search box. No clutter. No distractions. A blank white canvas that invited a straightforward question, "What do you want to know?" Users loved it. Google grew because people recommended it. No expensive ads. No flashy marketing. It spread through the most powerful mechanism in technology's history, word of mouth. As the company expanded, Larry and Sergey crafted a culture that blended intellectual rigor with playful creativity. They embraced data-driven decisions but encouraged wild experimentation. They insisted on hiring exceptional talent and fostering open dialogue. They installed lava lamps and exercise balls, offered free meals, and allowed employees to spend 20% of their time on side projects. Some of the world's most popular services, Gmail, Google News, and even early ideas for Google Maps, emerged from that culture of exploration. Google was no longer just a search engine, it was becoming the backbone of the modern digital experience. In 2004, Google went public. The initial offering instantly turned Larry and Sergey into billionaires, but more importantly, it gave the company resources to expand its mission. They reiterated their long-term philosophy in a founder's letter: Google would not chase short-term profits at the expense of innovation or user trust. The company's growth was explosive. It expanded into email, mapping, video, translation, image search, and massive data centers that silently powered the world's information highways. Soon after, the word Google entered dictionaries as a verb. People no longer searched online, they Googled it. Larry and Sergey believed that Google's mission, organizing the world's information, extended far beyond blue links on a website. They began exploring how people interact with digital tools in everyday life. They acquired YouTube, which would become the largest video platform on Earth. They developed Android, a mobile operating system that grew into the most widely used smartphone platform in the world. They built Google Chrome, turning it into the world's leading web browser. They digitized books, mapped cities, imaged streets, translated languages, and explored artificial intelligence long before it became mainstream. As Google expanded across continents and devices, Larry Page and Sergey Brin found themselves leading not just a search engine, but one of the most influential companies in history. With billions of users, Google became a place where people searched for news, health information, travel plans, recipes, scientific research, and even personal questions they might not ask anyone else. With such influence came new responsibilities and profound ethical questions. How should search results be ranked? What happens when misinformation spreads? How do you respect privacy while improving algorithms? Should governments regulate the internet more tightly? What role should technology play in shaping democracy and public life? These questions did not have easy answers, but Google could not ignore them. Larry and Sergey knew that decisions about data, algorithms, and user experience now carried global consequences. In response, they invested heavily in security, encrypted communications, and transparency reports. They hired ethicists, policy experts, and global advisory teams. While challenges remained, Google started taking steps to acknowledge the weight of its societal role. Yet even as the world debated Google's influence, the founders stayed committed to their core belief that better information leads to better decisions, and better decisions improve lives. Larry Page, in particular, began turning more of his attention toward radical innovation, projects that felt closer to science fiction than to daily search queries. He believed that the company needed a place where engineers and scientists could dream without restrictions. That mindset led to the creation of Google X, a semi-secret innovation lab dedicated to moonshots, ambitious, high-risk projects that aimed to solve enormous human problems. Led initially by scientist Sebastian Troon, Google X explored ideas such as self-driving cars, high-altitude internet balloons, Project Loon, wearable technology, Google Glass, delivery drones, robotics research, life sciences and longevity studies. Some projects eventually ended or pivoted, others laid foundations for real-world transformation. The self-driving car initiative, for example, grew into Waymo, a company that continues pushing the boundaries of autonomous transportation. Larry, with his passion for automation, transportation, and efficiency, saw self-driving cars not just as a convenience but as a way to reduce accidents, save lives, and free people from wasted time. Sergey, meanwhile, Loved the playful audacity of moonshots, attempts to reach for the extraordinary, even if they failed. Google X reflected the founders' belief that technology should aim high, even outrageously so. By 2015, Google had grown so complex, spanning search, maps, ads, email, mobile, artificial intelligence, fiber internet, robotics, medical research, and moonshots, that the founders made a bold decision. They transformed Google into a new parent company called Alphabet Incorporated. Under this new structure, Google became a subsidiary focused on core products, search, YouTube, Gmail, Maps, Ads, Android. Other ventures such as Waymo, Verily, Calico, DeepMind, and Google X became independent units under the Alphabet umbrella. The Alphabet restructuring allowed each division to pursue its own goals with clarity, accountability, and financial transparency. It also reflected Larry and Sergey's philosophy: companies should remain nimble, pursue big ideas, and avoid being weighed down by bureaucracy. Larry Page became CEO of Alphabet. Sundar Pichai took over as CEO of Google, guiding the day-to-day operations of the core business. Sergey Brin became president of Alphabet, overseeing special projects and research initiatives. This marked a symbolic transition as well. After nearly 2 decades of direct leadership, the founders stepped back from daily management. But they remained deeply involved in long-term vision and high-level planning. As Alphabet matured, one technological force rose to the top of its priorities: artificial intelligence. Larry and Sergey had long believed that AI would fundamentally transform computing. Google had been applying machine learning to search results, speech recognition, and translation for years. But with the acquisition of DeepMind, a London-based AI research lab known for its work on reinforcement learning, the company pushed forward dramatically. DeepMind made global headlines when its AlphaGo program defeated Lee Sedol, one of the world's greatest Go players, in 2016. The victory showcased AI's ability to learn and excel in deeply complex strategic environments. Other AI models began assisting with protein folding predictions, energy optimization in data centers, and medical imaging breakthroughs. To Larry and Sergey, AI represented the ultimate extension of their mission, helping organize and understand the world's information. They saw it not only as a tool for efficiency, but as a way to help scientists solve problems previously too complex for human cognition alone. Even as Alphabet expanded into transformative technologies, public criticism intensified. Google and its related companies faced questions about monopoly power, user data and privacy, algorithmic bias and misinformation, labor practices and ethical AI development, influence on elections and public opinion, the dominance of online advertising. Larry and Sergey recognized the validity of many of these concerns. But they also believed that technology, used responsibly, remained a profound force for good. They supported efforts to improve transparency, expand policy teams, and strengthen internal governance. The tensions between innovation and oversight became a defining feature of Alphabet's identity. Every breakthrough carried both opportunity and responsibility. And every responsibility demanded thoughtful solutions. In December 2019, Larry Page and Sergey Brin made a surprising announcement. After more than 20 years of leadership at Google and Alphabet, they stepped down from their executive roles. Sundar Pichai became CEO of both Google and Alphabet, leaving the founders free to focus on research, philanthropy, and long-term initiatives. They did not leave the company. They remained major shareholders and continued to advise on strategic questions. but they no longer ran day-to-day operations. For both men, it marked the end of an era. They had gone from graduate students tinkering on borrowed servers to leaders of one of the world's most influential technology companies. Now they wanted space to explore broader ambitions, scientific curiosity, and personal passions. After stepping down, Larry Page continued pursuing personal interests away from public attention, including aviation, renewable energy, and human longevity. He invested in flying car startups exploring electric vertical takeoff and landing technologies. He traveled, studied emerging technologies, and embraced a quieter lifestyle. Sergey Brin, known for his playful side, remained involved in research, philanthropy, and robotics. He supported initiatives around education, science, and Parkinson's disease research. He also maintained his passion for physical fitness, flying, and exploring new technologies. Though no longer operating Google's machinery directly, both founders continued embodying the same mindset that propelled their careers: curiosity, experimentation, and the belief that technological progress could improve the human condition. The global impact of Larry Page and Sergey Brin is difficult to measure because it touches nearly every aspect of modern life. How we search for information, how we watch video, how we navigate cities, how we translate languages, how we email, store files, collaborate, and connect, how we use smartphones, how AI shapes medicine, climate research, and industry. For billions of people, daily routines begin with a Google search, a Gmail notification, a YouTube clip, or an Android device. Their technologies have reshaped global communication, education, entertainment, commerce, and understanding. Larry and Sergey didn't just build a company, they altered the architecture of the modern digital world. Looking back, their story unfolds like a cinematic narrative. Two boys raised in homes full of mathematics and ideas. Childhoods defined by curiosity rather than conformity. A meeting at Stanford that felt like a clash of minds, but was actually the beginning of extraordinary collaboration. A research project built on borrowed servers. A garage office that ignited a revolution. A mission to organize the world's information. A culture that encouraged creativity, risk, and imagination. A company that expanded into mapping, mobile, video, autonomous cars, and artificial intelligence. Leaders who shaped the digital era and then stepped back, leaving the next generation to build forward. Their legacy is not defined by a single product, but by a mindset. If you have a bold idea, pursue it relentlessly. If you see a problem, solve it. If you face limitations, rethink the system. And if the future seems too big, build it one step at a time. Today, when billions of people type questions into a search box, rely on Google Maps to guide them, or watch videos recommended by algorithms, they participate in a story that began with two students who believed the internet could be better, more organized, more accessible, and more meaningful. Larry Page and Sergey Brin did not just change the web, they changed how humanity accesses knowledge itself. Their journey remains one of the most influential technological stories of all time, a testament to curiosity, courage, and the power of an idea that began in a Stanford dorm room and grew into a global force shaping the 21st century.